Welcome to our podcast about the systems and the games we play and how those inspire the ones we make.
I'm Sam.
CJ. Fuck. We already.
Okay.
Damn it.
Okay. Take two.
Marker. Welcome to our podcast about the systems and the games we play and how those inspire the ones we make. I'm CJ.
And I'm Sam.
And this is Systems in Play. That was your part.
That's okay.
We'll get it one day.
The little ping pong battle for the intro.
Yeah, it's like we both gotta say it.
We could say it at the same time.
That
really corny.
Sound really bad.
Like in the first episode where we tried to sync. We tried to sync talking and it was really, really bad.
That was horrible. Man. We don't talk about the dark time.
Was that for the first episode or the first episode?
I think that was for the first episode.
Oh, okay. The first episode.
Yeah.
Would that mean... So if the first episode is episode 0, does that make the actual first one we record and didn't release, would that be like episode -1?
No, I think that's episode 1. Because that was where we were going to start. Now, here's how it works, right?
Okay.
We were going to start at episode 1, like everything else in the world.
Right? Starts
with 1. And then we recorded our first episode. We're like, this is not the format we want. So we went back and recorded another one, and then like, this is the actual one, and I don't know why we called it 0. I don't know why we called it 0, but we did.
Because we start the podcast with an off by 1 error, which is funny.
Yes. I love it. Missing episode 1, episode 7. All right. So what have you been playing, Sam?
I had been playing, so I've actually been playing a lot of Pokemon Unite. But we're not going to talk about that because that's boring. Other than the balance, they buffed Slowbro, which is my main.
Hell yeah!
And I was decent with Slowbro before, but now they buffed him insanely, and I am a god, and I am on this insane win streak right now.
Ooh, hell yeah!
Feels really good. I'm like, man, maybe I was the greatest Pokemon Unite player all along, and I was just, wearing my weighted ankle braces that were holding me back.
So I take it that your Diablo 2 transition didn't work, or it just wasn't Pokemon Unite?
Well, we tried Diablo 2, and we enjoyed it, but then they actually started trying to make Pokemon Unite good. They did some pretty decent balance patches. The 3rd anniversary is up, which means there's just a lot of free shit in the game right now. And I have been enjoying it more in the past couple of weeks than I have been previously. Oh. But Diablo 2 is still on the table. Fun game.
Hear it. Yeah. They heard that you were leaving. They're like, oh shit, we got to fix this system.
Oh, I am in. When you leave the game for a couple months and then come back, they give you a bunch of free stuff. And I'm getting all that free stuff in combination with the 3rd anniversary stuff. Dude, I'm rich.
Oh, man.
I have everything.
They know how to do addiction right.
That's right. They give me a free cigarette with every package.
Every Pokemon comes with 1 free bag of Coke.
But more interestingly, I've been playing Animal Well.
Yeah.
Animal Well is a really interesting Metroidvania game. It was developed by Shared Memory and the first game published by Big Mode, which is famously Video Game Donkey's game studio. And so far, it's a good studio because Animal Well is knocked it out of the park.
Hell yeah.
It is so good. I ended up beating the whole thing, I think over 3 or 4 days. So I started playing it shortly before we recorded episode 7, recorded a long piece where I talked about it there. We lost that episode, and in my depression, I played Animal Well for 48 hours straight. Not really, but I slept a little bit between there, but other than that is the only thing I did. And it's really good. It's a really good game.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a Metroidvania. Has cool neon, I guess, graphics. It's like colors on black, the black, and then everything is these shiny colors that kind of come out of it, and it gives it this cool neon aesthetic.
Yeah, it looks like real luminescent, I think is the word.
Yeah, like being in a cave with glowing mushrooms, but that's not the actual aesthetic. So you start the game, and it really just kind of throws you in without any explanation. I don't think there is a single piece of text in the game outside of a couple UI things. Like when you unlock an item, it tells you the name of the item, I think. And that's just about it. Yeah, the game really just kind of throws you in raw. You're a little round blob animal, and you're in a well, and there's a bunch of other animals in there, and you kind of come out of the starting area, and there are these 4 animal statues. They're pretty creepy looking, and basically from there you just explore the available map and try and unlock things, and eventually once you explore far enough into one area, you will find the first, I don't know what it's called. There's like a little flame thing, and you find the flame for each animal statue, and that unlocks the statue, and then when you get all 4, something else happens. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't know if this is a spoiler or not. I remember in episode 7 I said, it kind of looks like a horror game, and you're like, nah, I don't feel that, but I think your answer's changed.
Yeah. I was maybe like 5-10 hours into the game. Oh no, it couldn't even been that. I wasn't that far into the game. And there were a couple, like, I don't know, there was some creepy architecture, I guess, in the game. There was a statue or two. I'm like, ooh, I don't think this is a spoiler. That wolf has a scary face. I think that wolf is in the trailer. Wolf has a scary face, and that was about the only thing I had experienced. But no, this is a horror game. This is or at least it is a scary game. It is a Metroidvania with some pretty unsettling elements. Nothing gory, nothing like explicitly violent, but man, some of these animals are pretty freaky.
They belong in a well, you could say.
They need to stay in the well. All I'm gonna say is I learned what sound a kangaroo makes, and I wish I didn't. Yeah, I think the kangaroo is in the key art for the game. It is in the trailer. It's not a spoiler, but I don't like the sound that they make. I really don't. And yeah, but the game does a really good job of just building an atmosphere. And, you spend most of the game just kind of wandering around in these areas. Each room typically has some kind of a secret or a puzzle to find, and usually like limited by your item, of course, because it's a Metroidvania. But it's just this atmosphere of exploring and wandering around in this, not empty, but isolated, I would say. There's not really any other, occasionally you'll see like a little background animal sprite running around. Occasionally there will be an animal that is like, not necessarily actively trying to kill you, but if you touch it or you interact with it in the wrong way, it will. Yeah, there are very few things in the game that are actively trying to kill you, but there are a lot of ways to die, I guess I would say.
It's just like real life, dude.
There are a handful of things that will try and kill you, but generally it's just, you're just wandering around, you're finding new items. All of the items are really simple, but they're done very well, and they have a lot of different uses. I will spoil one. If you don't want any spoilers at all, go ahead and skip ahead a little bit. But this is probably the first item that most people unlock. It is the Frisbee. And the Frisbee is really cool. You can throw it, and it'll bounce off the wall, and it'll come back to you. You can use it to distract certain types of animals. They'll like chase after it.
I'm assuming dogs.
Yeah, believe it or not. But you can also use it to throw it across the room and like hit a lever or something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to reach.
Oh.
You can use it to, I think they're like stalactites hanging from the ceiling, and you can throw it at those and it will like knock them down.
Yeah, always remember stalactites cling tight to the ceiling. Stalagmites might fall on your head.
Well, if stalagmites might fall on you.
That's how I've always remembered it, and I've never gotten it wrong.
It's a good way to remember it. My favorite thing about Frisbee, and this is, just a good example of how it takes a really simple item and does interesting things with it you wouldn't expect. If you throw the Frisbee and you jump immediately after and go forward, it's kind of tricky to do, but you can jump and land on top of the Frisbee and then fly across the room.
Whoa.
And then bounce on stuff. The first couple times I did it was on accident, but eventually you get far enough in the game, and it is part of puzzles that you need to complete.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really cool. And there's just so many little things like that in the game.
That I see what you mean by like just simple, but the ways you can utilize it are like a lot more than just throw it,
Right.
That's cool.
And you kind of inherently like, oh yeah, I know a Frisbee. Everybody knows flying spinning disc.
Yeah.
But the thing I think I like most about the game is just the atmosphere. I am a big fan of horror and mystery, but I think a lot of it is done pretty poorly. I think atmosphere is a really big part of it, and then a lot of times the payoff to that atmosphere is not as good as the mystery and the atmosphere up until that point.
Yeah.
You have like, typical ghost story, and it's like leading up, and it's like, oh, what is the monster? It's killing people. And then it's like, it's a vampire. And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, that's not that cool. That's okay. That's the type of thing that I get really frustrated at. And I think what Animal Well does really well is it just keeps the mystery going. And even when some of the bigger reveals happen, I don't even want to call it a reveal, but whenever kind of the horror elements pay off and you do see things that are scary, there's never a point where I feel like, okay, well, now I know what the deal is, and the sense of mystery and fun is gone.
Yeah. The Dark Pictures anthology comes to my mind, like Until Dawn, Man of Medan. Have you seen those games?
I know of them, but I haven't played them.
I see what you're saying. A lot of mysteries and horror stuff should remain mysteries for them to be more fun to me. I don't know.
The thing I always like to say is the monster on screen will rarely match the monster I have in my head.
Yes.
And will rarely be as scary. Dude. But Animal Well delivers. Number one, some of that shit is unsettling. Number two, it's just, even when you beat the game, you beat it, and then all of a sudden there's like, okay, here's like 6 more things that were kind of always there, but we're gonna like draw your attention to them. Here's a handful of new mysteries for you to look at. Like, it immediately says like, this game is not over. You have beaten the boss, but there is a lot more in this game. And as I've been like playing through the post game, you get like double the items that you get in the main game. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting stuff.
Oh man.
I rarely play post game. I don't really I'm like, okay, I beat the game. I got the experience I wanted done. Not really the case with Animal Well. I've really been enjoying just kind of wandering around and trying to figure out all the secrets. And I played for a solid like 50% of the time of my main game in the post game, and I still don't feel like I'm close to figuring everything out.
Oh, that's solid praise. I'm the same way. I don't play post game that much, so if the post game is good, it's a good game.
Yeah. Maybe that was just the depression of losing episode 7 speaking, and I just didn't want to live my life. But no, I think it was genuinely that good. I I enjoyed it a lot.
Sorry, are you sure though that it's not? Because I played one of the Castlevanias and it has a fake out ending, and little high school, middle school, I forget, little CJ was like, "Oh man, that was a short game, but that was a good game," and I never touched that game for years. And I came back and I was like, "This was a really obvious fake out ending, stupid child." And there was so much more game. Are you sure that's not happening right now?
I'm not convinced that there's not like some significant post-game stuff that I haven't found yet.
Okay.
But I did get credits.
Okay.
I'm going to assume that if I got credits, that's
Okay.
the end. Also, I think there may have been an ARG for this game. I don't know. I remember I did have to look up some of the secrets for the post-game. I couldn't figure out how certain things worked. And then in that, I saw like a offhanded mention of an ARG. I don't know anything about it. I want to look into it though. I'm sure it's over by this point. But it's pretty. I'm into that type of thing, which is cool.
I love that these newer like horror-esque indie games have like ARGs attached just to keep the horror going outside the game. It's cool.
A really cool way to build up hype for the game too.
I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing as how it's a Metroidvania, how's the backtracking? I know this is a thing that a lot of Metroidvanias can struggle with, is terrible backtracking.
I would say it wasn't bad for most of it, but there was a part where I felt really, really stuck. And I spent like 3 or 4 hours just wandering through the areas that I had unlocked, going to the end, going to like the furthest point I could, being like, no, there's not really anything else I can do here, trying to find more secrets, trying to figure out what's going on. Basically just got stuck. And I ended up having to look it up, and there were several people who got stuck in the same spot. Basically, you needed to like go. There's an item early on in the game that you have to trade for another item, and you have to go and get that original item back and then take it to another spot in the map. And by the time I had gotten far enough in the game that I needed to do that, I had completely forgotten about the original item that I had traded. After that, it wasn't too bad. After that, I felt like I would make progress in whatever direction I went until the post-game, but I think post-game backtracking is fine. I think that's expected because you've unlocked everything and you just kind of need to go and re-explore all the map at that point because you have more items and such.
Yeah, no, post-games, I think usually not that bad. I remember getting stuck in the same Castlevania I was telling you about because you get an item like on this side of the castle and you got to go back to this side of the castle and use it.
Yeah.
But I was tiny and my brain was underdeveloped.
There is a point in the game, and I don't think this is a huge spoiler. You unlock the map at some point, and then later you can unlock the pencil, and it lets you draw on top of the map. It lets you put stamps and literally just like draw. And there is a point where you need to do something quickly, and you have to kind of plan your route out ahead of time. It was super useful for that. It was really cool. Good. I wish more Metroidvanias had features where you could edit the map, because I don't really want to draw out my own when there is one given to me. But give me like those tools.
I love that.
I'm going to a tip for new players, because I did not figure this out until I was like 80% of the way through the game, which is weird. Probably a me issue. The game does not give you any tutorial. Click X if you're playing on Switch, or the up. On the right side of the controller, click the top button. It opens up a menu with all of your items. I did not know that was there. Typically, you have to find your items by clicking L and R to like scroll through a little menu. That not only opens the item menu, but it also pauses time so you can pick the items. You need to be able to do that for certain sections of the game. Like once you unlock a bunch of items, switching quickly through all of the items by pressing L and R is not feasible, and you need to be able to take that beat to pick out the item. So it took me a really long time to figure that out. Normally, I start a game and I click all of the buttons. I don't know why I didn't do that this time. But yeah, click all the buttons. There's one that opens up a menu with your items. You will need that.
Mm. It's always important to click all the buttons because games like Duck Game, you could find the quack button.
Oh man, can you imagine playing Duck Game and not knowing about the quack button?
Dude.
One of my, this is a really good party game.
Yeah, we gotta. I wanna have a couch co-op game because man, I've got some good ones to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, I could talk a lot about couch co-op games. I think that might be my favorite genre. It's definitely the most fun I have.
Well, let's just make this episode a couch co-op game. Just forget everything else that I.
No, because this is a you episode, and you're going to lead it, and you're going to lead me down an amazing road of discovery that I know almost nothing about.
Oh boy.
CJ.
Yeah.
What are we talking about this week?
Well, so I was playing me some Resident Evil 3 recently. I was going to play Resident Evil 2 because I had beat it forever ago. And you can, like, after you beat it with one character, you play as the other character that you could have picked and do whatever they're doing during your first playthrough.
Okay.
It's a really cool way of doing it.
Yeah.
So I think the first playthrough is always the same route, but you play as a different character. And then the second time, whatever character you didn't pick would be like that's the second route, but you're this character. So there's like 4 different stories, kind of.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
It's a weird way of doing it, and I was gonna go back and play through it again, but I totally forgot what I was doing, and the second playthrough is a little harder if I remember. So I just started 3. Long story short, I got to the end of 3. There's like a rank you get at the end of the whole game that gives you like the time it took and all that. I got a C, which is and when you get your rank, there's a death counter. And it got me thinking a lot about dying in video games.
Yeah.
Because I died quite a few times. Let me just say.
I die a lot in games, so this is a topic I'm pretty familiar with.
Good. Then you'll understand.
Oh.
So I believe dying is one of the many things that sets video games apart from other forms of media because, like, the main character in TV shows and books and stuff, they're not expected to die unless it's like really tragic.
Right.
But in a video game, you're expected to die. The main character bites the dust all the time before the credits roll.
That is such a good point. The main character is constantly dying.
Yeah.
And I can think of very few things where the main character dies in another game or in like a piece of media that's not a video game.
That's not good. I can think of a few TV shows where the main character dies a few times and just comes right back. And it's like, what's the point of dying? I'm not going to name any.
They respawn.
I'm not going to name any CW shows. But so this leads me to a question. What was the last video game that you died in? Was that Animal Well?
Yeah. So, yeah, Animal Well would have been it.
And what happens when you die in Animal Well?
It's a phone.
Oh.
You find a phone, kind of like Earthbound. You pick up the phone, you call, and then it saves the game. Yeah, it's really cool. Adds kind of to the mystique of the game. But when you die, you just respawn at the last phone you saved at.
Okay, all right. Keep that in mind because I think that'll come back later.
Okay.
But that's my point, though. You're expected to die in these games, so there's like a mechanic for it, right?
Right. It would be a bad time if I could not save or if I respawn at the first area every time.
Right.
Which I guess would basically be a roguelike in some context.
But this is all my point. I wanted to talk about dying. And for some games I'm going to talk about today, I think losing would be synonymous. You could like replaceable. You could replace the word losing and dying. Interchangeable.
Right.
So obvious spoilers in everything we're talking about today.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess if you play a game and you never die, ever.
Well, okay. Let me take a step back. I'm going to be talking about dying when you as the player die, but I'm also going to be talking about dying when the character dies. So,
Okay.
obvious spoilers for those.
Gotcha.
Anything we have in the description is fair game for this. So,
Okay, yeah. That's a good point. If you are concerned about anything, scroll through the list of games in the description, and if we're not going to list which ones have characters that die, obviously, but
yeah,
if you see a game in there and you're like, oh, I really want to play that, maybe tread lightly.
Yeah, no, just go through the description. We'll have a game and then the name of the character and at what point in the story they died. We'll have that all written out for you, so you won't get spoiled. So before we talk about like story deaths, like scripted actual deaths, we're going to talk about mechanical deaths in games. Like when you as the player bite the bullet. I've split these into 3 different deaths, all by their weight class. How much death weighs. Like if you put your death on a scale and on the other side is everything else about the game, how much would that weigh? Does that make sense?
So do you mean like how much progress you lose, or like how the impact of the death in terms of mechanics?
I think how much you weight death against whatever decision you're about to make. That is how much that is this weight system that I'm implementing.
I see. So like, an example, like in Animal Well, there are times where there will be a save point right next to an area that has a trickier platforming section. In that case, I'm not really going to be that concerned about if I die.
Exactly.
And I can play a little bit differently because I will respawn in the previous room and I'm not really losing anything. Versus toward the end, there's a pretty long stretch between the last phone and then the final boss.
Exactly. That is exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, first up, we have a lightweight death. Here, dying takes you back seconds before you died. It could take you back as far as you want because usually a lightweight death comes with a quick save button. You don't really lose anything but time and maybe some progress. So this would be like most RPGs, Bethesda games, multiplayer games, casual multiplayer games, let me be clear.
Right.
And in this one, where you go when you die is literally up to you because you could save at any point, at any time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tears of the Kingdom jumps to mind because you can save at any point. And if you die, you just respawn at the last point, and you can kind of make it as difficult as you want. And by that, it can be very easy because you can just save immediately and then just do whatever thing you were going to try and do. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't really matter.
Right. And that was going to be my question to you is, what do you do with this power? Because there's a lot of games that you play that you can just save anywhere. What do you normally do with this kind of power?
I don't like to abuse it.
Really?
And I don't like to feel like I'm not cheating, but I like to feel the weight of what I do. So I don't save constantly. I honestly should probably save more because sometimes it bites me in the butt. I typically, my thought process is, I'm like, oh, I need to, like glide from this cliff to another thing and shoot a flame arrow in between and then ride that updraft. I'm going to save. This is going to be tricky. I'm probably not going to get it right on my first try. So let me save up here. That way I can still kind of do the thing I want to do, even if I don't get it right on the first try. That being said, to me, there's something to be said about having the weight of being forced to get it right on the first time and just living with the consequences of whatever happens after. Maybe that's I fall in this big ravine and then I have to find a way to climb myself back up. I have that thought kind of in my mind, and that's what leads me to make decisions about when I do and don't save. Sometimes it would be advantageous for me to save, but I don't because for me the game is more fun. It like adds stakes to the game.
Mm. Yeah, that's good because that is definitely what I'm gonna be talking about with these next few deaths. For this one, for me, it's the classic saving in Skyrim and then murdering your hometown. That's what I do with that power. Like, dying doesn't matter because I can just go back in time.
Okay. That being said, in more like immersive sim games, I do mess with that. I don't know if you recall during our playthrough of Dishonored,
Yeah.
we unlocked a little power called Wind Blast.
Blast, dude.
And I would just occasionally, we're sneaking through, I'm trying to get to the end, and I'm like, oh, sneaking is hard. And I just wind blast everybody. I kill literally every NPC in the area, and then I will go and respawn back to my stealthy playthrough and get all the murdering out of my system and then go back.
Oh yeah. That's one of the perks of a lightweight death. Like, you die, it doesn't matter because you just saved. Like, let me take you through a quick scenario that I'm going to take you through with the rest of these deaths, but first with a lightweight death.
All right.
You're the hero of the kingdom. You just finished some epic quest, and now you're traveling through the woods on your way back to the city of Schittsburg. But what's this you see? An NPC you've never met before, traveling alone in the woods. My, what a nice hat he's wearing. Don't mind if I do, quick save. So it's a tale as old as video games. How it ends doesn't matter. Either you kill him and take his hat, he kills you, or you kill him and you lose all the quests and then you just quick save back, or you quick load back.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Death means nothing. We could press Control Z on life, right?
Right. I wish I had that power in life sometimes.
Right.
Man, what a cool hat.
Right. So that's a lightweight death. They made a whole episode about it in Rick and Morty. That's what a lightweight death is. What do you think are some like pros and cons? Like, I had originally written some down, but I'm like, no, let's turn this into a conversation because what do I know?
Yeah. Off the top of my head, something I thought about while you were giving that example is that it does give you the opportunity to try things that you might not otherwise play. A point that I've heard brought up before is that players will tend to optimize the fun out of the play given the opportunity to do so. Like, you know, I don't want to lose my progress. I don't want to do this. I'm going to play very conservatively to make sure that I win. And that's it's a lot of people's instinct is to optimize for winning when it would be more fun to kill the guy and take his hat and then deal with the consequences. The having a lightweight death is nice because you can try that. And, you know, for some people, what they're going to want to do is try killing the guy over and over again in a bunch of different ways to make sure they're not caught, to make sure the body's hidden, to really go out of their way to make sure there's no consequences and they get the hat. I think someone like me, I just kind of roll with the punches. I'll save beforehand just in case it's like a really bad idea. You know, a kicking a chicken in Zelda situation where you steal this guy's hat and you've summoned the hat god, and he deletes your save file or
right. You kill him out in the middle of the woods and suddenly there's like $500 bounty appears and like no one's around to see it. You're like, what?
Yeah, exactly. I like to cover my bases, but typically I'll just roll with the punches. But I do feel more empowered to make those decisions because I kind of have that safety net.
I'm so glad you gave me that answer. That was at the top of my pros and cons list before I erased it, was experimentation.
Yeah.
You get a lot more experimentation with these lightweight deaths. I had another point, damn it, while you were talking, and I just forgot it.
Well, while you're thinking about that, going back to Dishonored, I think not only does it encourage you to try different options in different quests, I think I would have had a primarily stealth-based playthrough when I played that game for the first time if I didn't have the option to try to just fuck around and see what happens and play with these insane ragdoll physics.
Mm.
Eventually, there came a point where I, like cleared a whole room by wind blasting. And I should clarify, wind blast is a power you unlock in Dishonored where you unleash a gust of wind that is so strong it will blow the limbs, the heads and arms off of your enemies. It's freaking cool.
It's so amazing for this like stealth-based game that you can just do that.
That is the easy mode for the game. You can just wind blast everybody, deal with the consequences, throw body. Like one of my favorite moves is I would wind blast somebody's head off, pick up their head, and then wind blast the head at another guy as a projectile, and it just worked. It was amazing. I probably would have played a stealth game if I had never had the opportunity to like experiment with that.
Yeah.
And there came a point where, I'm like, fuck it. I don't want to play a stealth game. I want to wind blast. And I had a lot more fun.
I remember because I was there for that and you were like struggling with it. And I don't think we were having fun, but like once you started blasting, like it was really fun. It was fun.
Oh, it went from like a stealthy atmospheric game to a comedy.
It was funny.
It was hilarious. And I did have to deal with the consequences of those decisions later, but I had to deal with them while having wind blast, so it was okay.
Yeah, exactly. The wind blast. The otherwise known as the classic 90s kids toy, the Airzuka. I remembered what I was going to say earlier. I liked your point about how you don't use it. Like you don't abuse the system. And that's a good thing about lightweight deaths is you can sort of set your own limitations.
Yeah.
And they're not developer set limitations,
Yeah. I do think it's kind of a intuitive way to make your own difficulty. And for me, the fact that I could save at any point doesn't make it any less of a interesting experience for me. I'm not like, it's not one of those things that's kind of nagging in the back of my brain. I'm like, oh, well, this could be easier if I wanted it to. I enjoy playing it in the way that feels right for me. And I feel like it's a very elegant system for that.
Yeah. And like when you set your own limitations, you don't like, if you fail, you don't feel as bad.
Yeah.
Like if you're taking me, if I'm trying to stealth and I keep fucking it up and I'm like, all right, I just want to stealth and I go back, it doesn't feel as bad as the second you get caught, it loads you back.
Right.
I don't know, it feels better to me.
And I think that another pro of the system is you can have that experience, but the developer can say like, okay, this area you can't save. And, boss battles, it's fairly common, or even like a boss area. They might just say, once you get into Hyrule Castle, you can't save. And whenever you die, you need to go back and you need to go through the gauntlet. That's not actually how it works, but that is something the developer could do. And I don't really think that breaks any sort of immersion or, whatever. You can have that freedom as much as you want, but it's also not really a problem to take that away.
Yeah.
A con of the system.
I was going to say, let's jump into cons.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Again, I think the system I probably played with this most is Tears of the Kingdom. So I'll pull from a lot of examples there. Something that I have done is lock myself into a state that I didn't want to be in. So the example I'm thinking of is in Breath of the Wild when you're going to fight Waterblight Ganon. You can save before the fight, and whatever items you've used before at that point, like if you use them and then save, they are gone. They have been consumed. And you can't cook, you can't create more items in that point. And so what happened to me is I used a bunch of items and then saved, and then I was not able to use those items again after I had died.
Hmm.
And I wasn't able to go back to a previous save because you're not allowed, or I didn't have any saves before I had gone. I didn't have any saves after I had gone through the rest of the dungeon. So my choice
Oh.
were either I go to this one save where I'd like put myself in a shitty state. And I think I'm misremembering the details, but you get the point. Like you can save at an inopportune time or
Mhm.
like after you've made a stupid decision and then put yourself in like a hell of your own creation. And
Yep.
it's either you deal with those consequences or you go back to a previous point in the game.
Mhm.
It's very unfortunate when that happens. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily bad game design, but it's bad human design.
Yeah.
Making me live with my decisions.
I got a story about that actually.
Hmm.
Sort of a similar situation, but I think this was on the game. Fallout New Vegas.
Hmm. Good one.
What is that first town you get to? It's a real place or near Vegas. Has the roller coaster.
Oh, with the dinosaur?
No, unless in real life it has the dinosaur, but
No, I'm thinking where the place where you get Boone.
yeah, no, that one
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I
yeah,
don't know what it's called, but you have the,
it has the Bison Hotel, which
okay,
is a real place, I'm pretty sure.
and it has that really nice car.
Yes. 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 That place. Anyway, there's before you can get onto the roller coaster, actually.
Yes.
It's behind the Bison Hotel. You enter the Bison Hotel, you get an autosave there. And then I don't think you get an autosave until like something else happens. But anyway, my last save was there inside the hotel. I get to the top of the roller coaster
Hmm.
and it's like broken because it's old and crusty. I'm like, I want to try to make this jump. There's like a gap in the coaster. So I'm going
Right.
to save right here at the edge of the coaster.
Oh, no.
Make this jump. And I failed. I died. So I loaded my save and I was on PS3. So it was like 10 minutes before I got to play
yeah,
again.
I forgot about that.
I loaded in and immediately fell. For some
Oh,
reason,
no.
the save pushed me like a centimeter forward and I had to go back through the Bison Hotel, which, funny story. I don't know. Little tangent.
I've done that, and then you're like, okay, this time I'll try and pause, and I'll like take a bunch of stim packs before I fall. Maybe I can like survive long enough. Yeah, I've totally had that happen to me.
I love the mentality of I'm going to stop in midair and just snort all this crack cocaine and maybe I won't die.
I'm gonna pause, eat a steak, eat this cake, eat this block of cheese. All right, I'm gonna be okay.
Exactly. But yeah, that is a pretty big con, I think. But if you make enough saves, I think that can be circumvented, but I never make enough saves.
Yeah.
Ever. Another obvious con, I think, would be just death means nothing.
Right.
Like, you're not even thinking about dying when you're making decisions with a lightweight death system.
That's a good point. Asterisk.
Hmm.
I think in a lot of games, death doesn't mean anything anyway.
That's true.
I think they want you to feel like it means something.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it does in the case of like a difficult platformer. I've been playing The Messenger, and you have only a certain number of, you'll have a checkpoint, and for more difficult sections, the checkpoint will be, you'll have quite a ways between checkpoints. And if you die, you have to go really far back. In that case, it does mean something. I think in a lot of games, it like feels like it should, but it doesn't. But it also doesn't give you those tools.
Right.
I
think
trying to think.
The Messenger is a good example of a medium weight death, which we'll get to in a bit.
I got a lot to say about that one.
Oh, that's a good one.
Shoot, I had another thing I wanted to mention. Oh, this isn't as explicitly related to death, but I do want to say you almost have an abundance of choice when it comes to systems with save scumming and lightweight deaths.
Mm-hmm.
At times, it can be hard to just pick a path. I was really bad in New Vegas about I want to try everything. I want to explore everything. And so I would have like I would save before key decisions
Mm-hmm.
so I could have the option to go back and make a different decision going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool that it's an option, but it also meant that the choices didn't really mean anything,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little unfortunate for an RPG. Kind of in the same line with what you're saying about death didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
For an RPG that's all about choices, if I can just go and make a different choice later,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's nice to have the option, but also it felt almost paralyzing that I could do everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I sometimes I would go a couple hours into a decision. I'm like, no, I don't think I want to do this. And then I would go back and I would have like these multiple branching paths within one save, within one like playthrough of a character.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I don't know. I appreciate the option, but also it felt a little overwhelming in a
Mm-hmm.
way. Yeah, it felt like I had an abundance of choice and an abundance of options, and I could just do everything and I could be everything. And so kind of like the actual story of what was happening in the game felt a little bit nebulous because it could change at any point on a whim.
I think for the purposes of like lightweight deaths, medium weight deaths, we could also lump in like undesired outcomes
Mm-hmm.
as another way. Like in terms of video games, if you get an undesired outcome, sometimes it has the same exact weight as dying to me.
That's fair.
So I think you're onto something there, where decisions mean nothing as well as dying.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense where, maybe you don't die explicitly, but,
Your soul
you
does.
like, you lose your horse or you like a cool weapon that you had gets lost or
Mhm.
you like end up in a storyline that you didn't really care to
Mhm.
go down. That makes sense as well.
I think that's what was missing when I was writing all of this down, was death being synonymous with a bunch of just bad shit. I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, death is pretty bad usually, so I think that makes sense.
Yeah, death is pretty bad. I don't know if we've already answered this. Next up, I was going to ask, can you think of any games that did this right or wrong, specifically? Any experiences? I already told my New Vegas story, which I was going to tell for this, but...
I want to say that like that 2010s era of games was very much like just save whenever you want, do whatever you want, have as many saves as you want, is
Mhm.
like within the realms of what this console memory can contain.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that's good or bad. That is one of the options.
Right.
I again, I feel bad for talking about it so much, but it's probably the game I've played most ever. In Breath of the Wild, I like that you have saves, but you only get so many before they get overridden.
Mhm.
I don't think you could save. Okay, recording again. Can you hear me? Yeah, it looks good.
Sorry about that. Big cut. That last thing you were saying was Breath of the Wild not having an infinite amount of saves.
Right.
I can't help but wonder if that's a hardware thing or if that's like a feature of the game. Like they don't want you to go that far back.
I definitely could see it being a hardware thing, especially with it initially coming out for the Wii U, which had like 0.2 gigabytes of RAM.
That's true.
So that's definitely possible. I do think that it adds to it so that you can have some leeway, but you can't necessarily go back and travel all the way back to whenever you first came out of the cave and replay the game essentially.
Well, if that is all about that you wanted to say about that, we're going to move to a medium weight death now.
Yeah, sounds good.
Fucking amazing transition. Are you done talking? Next topic. So a medium weight death is a death where you lose some stuff. You lose money, You can lose experience points. You can lose progress. You can lose dignity. You can't make crack without egging a few omelets. So in an online game, we weren't supposed to acknowledge it. So
I heard it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. What? Okay.
So a medium weight death, I would say online ranked games. For me specifically, I've been playing some fighting games recently. These would be a medium weight death, and this is where death and lose are interchangeable.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when you die in an online fighting game, if you're playing ranked, you'll lose some rank. You'll lose some. Some games have like save points and auto saves, so you'll lose progress when you die, rather than just going back to like I saved before I tried to murder this man with a hat. And those are pretty notorious in like Square Enix games. And let me clarify for those that might not know. A save point in a game is where you have to go to a physical spot in the world of that game just to save your game, rather than just pushing pause and clicking save.
Right.
Kingdom Hearts has this where there's like a glowing circle that you walk onto. Resident Evil has the infamous or the famous typewriter. I love that way of doing it. Auto saves and checkpoints are when you cross a developer written line on the ground that you can't see, and it says saving in the top left corner.
Right.
I think these would both be classified as a medium weight death because you're losing progress in time.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good way of thinking about it. Is you are losing time.
Yeah.
Essentially, you like time that you put into the game to get to a certain point, or you know, if you're in a ranked game, you had to play through X number of matches to get that rank, and now you're going down.
Flashes back to last weekend, dude.
Do not flash back for me because I am the god of Pokemon Unite, and I'm never going to lose a match again.
Hell yeah, that's the mindset I wish I had. So my question, if you have enough experience, and my question for the audience as well, do you prefer having a save point where you have to physically do it, or do you prefer having a checkpoint? And you answered this in the cut. I'm gonna keep this real. We had a pretty big cut here.
Audacity is lovely and free, but sometimes it just stops recording.
Yeah, we're gonna install. We're gonna install one of those nuclear sirens that go off every time it stops recording, right next to us. But yeah, question: do you prefer checkpoints or save points?
I think I prefer checkpoints where I need to. I like number one. I like death and respawns to be somewhat contextual in the game, and I like having this diegetic like thing that I'm going to, even if it doesn't like in the lore or anything make a lot of sense. I don't know what it's like in Kingdom Hearts where I need to like touch a glowing light. I don't know if that's like a thing. I'm sure there probably is some lore to it because Kingdom Hearts is insane.
Okay, I want to stop you for just 1 second. Kingdom Hearts 2 has the best death because when you die, there's like a 2% chance you get to come back as Mickey Mouse.
Well,
go on.
That actually happens in real life too.
Yeah. Why do you think there are so many Mickey Mouse impersonators out there?
Like Shovel Knight, for example, you walk past a little glowing checkpoint orb. That doesn't mean anything. There's no like, there's no guy that's like, the checkpoints were built by the founders of this land many decades ago, and it siphons into the soul energy of the. That doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter what it is. But it's nice that it's there. It's nice that there is just something in the world that's not in a menu telling me like you've saved the game. Auto saving. Not only is it sometimes it's not in the world itself, but sometimes I don't even notice that it's happened. Pretty much any game you start it, and the first time you open the game, it'll have like the logo of the game or like the head of the character or like a pumpkin. It's like, when you see this icon, it means the game is saving. Do not interrupt the game while it's auto saving.
Right.
don't do that. But like, I don't even notice when those come up
Yeah.
most of the time. There's not like a flag in my brain that says, "Oh, it's autosaving. That means I can do whatever it wants." It makes me be a little bit more intentional with what I'm doing when I am more aware of what the saves are. Not only in the decisions I make, knowing that I have a save point to go back to. You know, if I just saved, I might kill the guy with the hat. But if, you know, I had saved 45 minutes ago, I might not. On the other hand, it also makes me like aware of when I can stop playing. Because sometimes, you know, you're knee deep and I'm like, I don't remember when the last time I saved was. I don't remember when the last autosave was. Maybe I can like pull it up in a menu somewhere and look at the time. I tend to be just more aware of it, and it gives me an out from the game. Not just like within the context. I'm like, okay, take a breather. I'm here. I'm safe. Gonna go like eat a sandwich. You know, it's like a good time to pause. So I think I prefer that system.
I think I'm in the same boat. I'd prefer having a nice safe area, and like the bonfires in Dark Souls are just so classic. They're like nice little safe havens. The telephone in Earthbound, nice. We had a whole episode about saving and save points,
right?
Cozy save points. But I'm glad that you mentioned the guy with the hat, because guess what? Lord Shubert and his magnificent hat are back. But now you're thinking, oh man, when was the last checkpoint? Is it even worth accruing a bounty if I do manage to kill him? Suddenly, your intrusive thoughts no longer have a hold on you. But what's a bit of lost progress when you could be wearing such a magnificent hat? Honestly, man.
It does. It forces you to just be a little bit more intentional. It doesn't, and it doesn't necessarily like prevent you from, you know, if I decide I don't want the hat and then I move on, and then I later decide I do, you know, I could always kill myself and then go back and get the hat, but just take the consequence of having to go back to a previous save and you know, repeat that time. It still gives you flexibility, but you do have to make decisions with some amount of intention.
As I said before the cut, like the critical thing here is now you're thinking about dying more than you were lightweight death.
Right.
I think earlier we started with pros and cons for a lightweight death, and then we talked about what games did it right and wrong. I think more of the pros and cons like came out of us talking about what games did it right and wrong. So I'm gonna flip that.
Okay.
What games do you think did it right and wrong? And before you answer, Jak and Daxter did it wrong.
Okay.
Here we are. We made it back to the cut, folks. So in Jak and Daxter 2, there is a sewer level, and this might not be everyone's hill, but it is my hill. The sewer level where you have to escort 3 dudes through this sewer that you've previously traversed, but they like open up a whole other area. It doesn't matter how far you get into that level. If they die, or if you die, you're back to just meeting those 3 dickheads. And I absolutely hate it.
That is such a good point. Like sometimes you can get stuck in just the most arbitrarily difficult, crappy section of gameplay for no reason. Like there's no reason you should have to do that section. That is like, I doubt the developers are like, man, this is a section that we really want to highlight in terms of difficulty and level design. Like we know we really want people to experience the sewer bomb level over and over again. I'd say that probably most fetch or like companion quest that are thrown into games that are not built around that type of thing probably fall into that category of God, I wish I could save and just like get through this section. That is a good point. Like I would say a con is that it can highlight a bad section of the game.
Yes.
In a negative way.
Yes.
By forcing people to go through a shitty gameplay loop over and over again. that you may not have realized was as shitty as it is.
Here's the thing. That level isn't necessarily hard. There's one part that's a little batshit if you don't play Jak and Daxter 2 every day like I did as a kid. But it's not even necessarily hard. It's just insanely long for how far you go back with that checkpoint. And
I see.
I firmly believe they did that because if they were to implement checkpoints with that level, they would have to either remember how much health that your NPC followers had, or they would have to reset them back to 100% every time you died and only went back like a few feet. And that would be cheating. So I think they just couldn't figure it out, didn't want to figure it out, or just straight up didn't do it.
I see.
Like having the game remember how much HP the NPCs had at what point you were at. Either way, that level has haunted me. That and the fucking Hellcats level, if anyone knows what I'm talking about. What are some games that you think did it right or wrong?
I definitely know the feeling you're talking about of like, here is like an abnormal section of gameplay that is really frustrating and slow for no reason. Nothing is jumping to my head immediately, but like, carry, roll this snowball up the hill as like a small snowball so you can make it a big snowball and roll it back down. You need to do that 3 times to hit the targets at the bottom. And if you mess up once and you hit, the snowball queen at the bottom, you lose. And now you have to do all the snowballs again. And it's like, this is the worst system ever. This is taking so long. And I think in a lot of cases, like you said, maybe because it's a more unique section of gameplay, it's not necessarily designed to be paused halfway through. And that's a really good point to where you can just get locked in these really crappy gameplay sections and have to spend an inordinate amount of time on a section of the game that a developer probably didn't put that much thought into. Playtesting is important for that reason.
Yeah.
But man, I wish I could think of a specific example, but that is a common thing that I've run into, and it can be very frustrating.
I know that I've had nothing but bad examples of this, but this is my favorite way of doing it, honestly, is with save points and stuff.
Right.
Another bad example, Legend of the Dragoon for the PS1. I've probably already told this story. I know I've told it to you. I don't know if I've told it to the podcast. It is sort of like Final Fantasy's lesser known brother. I don't know if it was by Square. It probably was. But it's a JRPG, and throughout the entirety of the game, you get a bunch of different party members. Some of them leave, some of them come back. Except for your main guy, Dart. You have to keep him in your party at all times. And I was so bad at RPGs as a kid. And it had action commands. You had to press A when he attacks in order to get the best version of that attack. And I was so bad at that. And Dart kept dying. And eventually I unlocked the next character who's already like leagues ahead of Dart because he never levels up because he's constantly fucking dying. And then you unlock the next character. And then eventually at the end of the disc, you have to fight with just Dart and like one other party member.
Oh, no.
And he was so fucking underleveled that I could not beat the game. But I came back many years later and it was a very big skill issue that little CJ had because that game is not that hard.
Oh, man, I get that.
But that is how it can go wrong. But again, underdeveloped brain.
Yeah, but I felt that. I think an example for me of where this is done well, and I don't think this is unique to. I'm gonna talk about Pokemon, but I don't think it's unique to this game. So in most of the Pokemon games, I'm gonna talk about the one I had the most familiarity with, which is Fire Red and Leaf Green. You can pretty much save at whatever point you want throughout the entire game. you can't load saves, but you get one save that you can activate whenever you want. Except, I think the one time that they turn this off, I believe, is when you get to the Elite Four, which is the 4 spoiler. It's every game. It's 4 really difficult trainers and then the champion at the end. You do not get to save between any of those trainers. And I think this is probably one of the only times, at least in Fire Red Leaf Green, where you have to go through this long gauntlet and can't save at any point in between. And it's a way of taking that system and using it to make a section more difficult.
Right.
And I think it would only work if you're, it only works because you can't save at any point. I'm going to say like during that section specifically. Again, I kind of talked about this during the lightweight section, but having a section of the game where it's like, okay, this section needs to be more difficult. You can't save here.
Yeah.
It can make, I'm just going to say can add something to the game and like elevate it in terms of difficulty without really needing to change the mechanics or do anything in particular like different.
Right. Medium weight death is a good way for the developer to tweak the difficulty outside of how you play the game.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think I wrote that down, but that is a really good point.
It's almost, I think now that I'm kind of thinking back at what I was saying earlier about like Tears of the Kingdom, there's certain sections where you're not allowed to save as well. It's almost like you can have a lightweight death game and then have a section of medium weight death and just kind of throw it in wholesale without a lot of consequences and just be like, okay, now this section you need to have weight. I think blending the two can be very effective at times.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to pause here because I had another example of a good implementation of death.
I think I already mentioned this a little bit. Multiplayer ranked games are a good example of a medium weight death because you're constantly thinking, "Oh man, I got to get better because if I lose, I'm going to lose my rank." Just throwing that out there. I was playing King of Fighters 15, and that has got me thinking about rank and medium weight deaths because I've suffered a lot of medium weight deaths in that game. Holy shit. Because I was playing Street Fighter 5 for a bit, and I was like, not amazing, but I was going up the rank pretty steadily, and I was feeling good. And then I bought King of Fighters 15 because I'm like, I want to try this game because it has the best character of all time, Terry, who's about to be in Street Fighter 5 or 6, sorry. And that game is a whole different beast, and I was not steadily moving up on my rank. I was constantly losing. So that also got me thinking about dying in video games.
Yeah, it's a very different. I mean, I think it's the same in that you are making an investment of time that you then lose as a consequence of, losing in the game. But the way the actual like effects of it, I think, are pretty different. For a ranked game, and my experience with this would be Pokemon Unite. You spend all of this time.
So you have no experience losing rank.
No, I'm the god. I'm basically the best player that has ever existed or never will. And I always win ranks. And I'm always in master rank because why wouldn't I be? I definitely don't play for a while, go on a brief winning streak, and then lose a couple of times and then quit the game for months at a time. But that's the thing is like sometimes you make that investment of time and you lose, but it's not really your fault. Especially in like a multiplayer game. Street Fighter where it's mono a mono, I feel like that's less so, but Pokemon Unite, I can just be paired with crappy teammates who don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
who have only made it this far because they play broken characters, and then their broken character gets nerfed, and they're still at a high rank, but now they suck because they don't actually know how to play the game. And then I'm like being punished because I can't carry my entire team because I play a defender. Like nobody else plays defenders. Somebody has to do it. You can't have a team without one. And you just can't. You can't win without one, but you also can't carry with one. It is very much a team-based game, and sometimes I feel like I'm being punished for something that's really beyond my control, and I get stuck in this really negative feedback loop where I'm like doing everything I can to win, but I can't move up forward in the rank at all. Skill issue, definitely, but also it can be a very frustrating feedback loop to get stuck in.
It is, what you're describing is the reason that I do not play team-based games. Because in a game like Street Fighter, if you face a really good opponent, you're like, oh man, he's good. Well, usually, not everyone. I'm like, oh man, that was good. Mad respect, because I'm going to go back and watch that replay, see what I did, see what you did. And usually you respect someone that's good.
Right.
But in a team-based game, if your teammate's bad, you're just pissed at them.
Yeah.
And I don't like that feeling.
No.
And also, it's usually me that's bad, and people are pissed at me, so...
Felt. I have never felt so much rage at a game outside of Pokemon Unite. And that's when I'm like, okay, I need to turn this off for a little while. I need to step away. But I'm like, genuinely, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, and to its credit, the game has some amount of like, if your teammate is idling, you will go down the rank initially, but it has like some automatic detection system. And after a day or so, it will like re-award you the rank that you lost if the person was AFK, which is good. That's how you need to do it. I think they also have a system of reporting where it's like, okay, this person was like actively helping the enemy team or was just like not engaging with the game at all. They have a system, but sometimes it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure that you like, there's like a little brother who picked up the Switch and started playing a game and has no idea what they're doing, is trying to play this game, and you're at like, ultra rank 2, and I really want to get up to the next rank, and I can't because you are a child who does not know what you're doing, and it is so incredibly frustrating. I get so angry. I'm a pretty chill dude 90% of the time, but that just sends me. I get so upset, and I don't like feeling like that. Maybe that's just kind of the nature of the beast of online games.
I think it's MOBAs. You're hearing it first, by the way, folks. Sam is a chill dude. I'm learning something new.
I'm like, I'm getting mad and like just getting so frustrated, and like go look in the mirror. Go look in the mirror, the light's flickering. I'm like, who have I become? Who is this man? I don't even recognize myself anymore.
That's the perfect ad for League of Legends.
Yeah,
who am I? What have I done? League of Legends, one day.
I can't imagine what that's like for an actually really toxic game like League of Legends.
League of Legends scares me,
man. Same. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have like a solid thesis there about what's good or bad. I think rank is a pretty like solid system. It exists in a lot of games. I think it's there for a good reason. But also it really is like inherently just kind of a checkpoint system where you can like move forward and then you lose progress for performing badly or losing, even if you did perform well. And I don't know how you design a system like that without making it inherently like a little bit frustrating, especially for team-based games.
That's what casual's for. That's why I specified multiplayer, ranked multiplayer versus casual multiplayer is basically a lightweight death system. Nothing's lost besides a little Little tears.
I wonder if there are any games that try and base your rank on something other than whether or not you win or lose the match. So something Pokemon Unite does is you have a rank within your team,
Mm-hmm.
sort of. It's like there's the MVP of each game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's determined by a number of factors, such as like how many assists you had, how many points you scored, how many enemies you killed. Also things like, there are objectives that come up throughout the match.
Mm-hmm.
How much did you help at those? Did you like deal the final blow on those? It would be interesting to see if there are any games that try and determine your rank based off of your individual performance,
Yeah.
rather than the performance of like whether or not you won or lost.
I want to say Street Fighter 6 does that because I felt like I could be performing really well and the guy just outclasses me and I don't lose as much rank, but maybe that's just me projecting what I wanted to have happened. But I know King of Fighters doesn't do that because I started and you face a bunch of computers to like it auto ranks you based on how you do against a bunch of computers. And computers are easier than humans.
Yeah.
So it put me up at like rank 12. I'm like, I don't think I'm ready for that. I should have like flubbed it against the CPUs. But then I'm fighting like 3 ranks ahead of me and they beat me and I go down a rank. I'm like, oh man, I was putting up a fairly decent fight for this guy being like 3 ranks ahead of me. But I haven't had that experience in Street Fighter 6. It's a little more lenient, I think.
Okay.
So I don't know. I want to say maybe sports games might do that.
I could see that.
Takes your performance into account rather than your whether you win or lose. I don't know. Let us know.
Yeah, I'm fairly new to like competitive online games, so I'm sure there's probably some that have some more interesting systems. Maybe even League has a different system for this that, it's just been around for so long, it might be a little more refined. Or maybe it's not, and that's why they hate each other. It also, I wonder, even, disregarding everything I said about like trying to do some algorithm to calculate your individual performance, even just like what's the gap between their score and your score.
Yeah.
If it's, in Unite, a significant number would be like 100 to 800 points. Maybe that should be like you lose the max amount of rank you can. But if it's, 799 to 800, if it's a close game, maybe you shouldn't lose as much rank.
Yeah.
If the whole point of a ranked match is to like kind of put you into a bucket of people of a similar skill level and allow you to get better at the game by playing with people who are roughly as good as you.
Right.
Maybe an episode there. Maybe there's a full topic there we could get into. I think it's a bit of a rabbit hole for this conversation.
I do want to say there are, I think, fighting games like they have to, but I don't know. I could be very wrong.
There's too many games out there for that not to be a system.
Right.
I'm sure we'll get a flood of emails, with the first video with 1,000 comments, people telling us about Biggest Man 3, the ultimate fighting game.
Yeah. Please. I'm ready to hear about Biggest Man 3. I want to know what's the deal with that game. But moving on to our final weight class, heavyweight deaths.
I'm interested about this one. So I'm like trying to follow the logic of lightweight to medium weight. Tell me, what is a heavyweight death?
I don't know if we'll talk. I don't know. We'll see what gets said. So a heavyweight death, when you die a heavyweight death, you lose almost everything. This could be starting a run over in a roguelike. You're starting from nothing every single time.
Okay.
This could be losing your 2-year-long hardcore Minecraft world. You lose a lot.
Yeah.
In a lightweight death, you choose where you go after you die. In a medium weight death, the developer chooses where you go when you die. In a heavyweight death, you go to hell. This is Iron Man mode. This is Minecraft hardcore. This is pain.
Mm.
Heavyweight deaths are heavyweight for a reason. So yeah, well, I didn't really have a question for this because it's pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
I don't usually play these kind of games. Do you? Can you think of any good versions of a heavyweight death or a bad version of a heavyweight death?
The one that jumps to my mind immediately is roguelike.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to specify roguelike versus roguelite here.
Right. I
Uh,
think a roguelite would be more of a medium weight death.
right. Where you have, I think it's, you almost want to think about,
It's like a blend of the two.
right. Almost think about a roguelite as more of almost like a ranked online match type thing where you're building your skill, you're playing like a round of the game, but you are still progressing both in your skills and you're unlocking things that help you potentially do better at the game.
Mm.
Um, Lots of good examples of this. Risk of Rain.
Mm.
You you know you die, you go back to the beginning, but you're also like unlocking new items that you can experience in the game.
Mm.
So even though you lose that round, you're still progressing through the game, through
Mm.
the content that the game has to offer. Uh, an example of a roguelike game would be Spelunky,
Mm.
where you don't, the only unlock in that game is, I think there's some skins maybe, and you unlock the tunnel man who
Mm.
will like let you jump ahead to certain levels,
Mm.
but that's more so you can practice going through that level. I don't think it's really feasible to actually beat the game
Mm.
by like starting at the last level and going forward. Like Spelunky, you kind of need to start from the beginning and go forward
Yeah.
to like get all of the items and do everything. Getting a little too, I'm getting a little
A little tongue tied.
I'm getting a little too tangential. Basically, I would say a rogue-like game
Mm.
would be heavyweight death,
Yeah.
where you die. There's not really anything that you save going
Yeah.
for. You're not making any progress, really. I think for those types of games, the heavyweight death system does work well.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about Spelunky a lot here because it's the one that comes to my mind immediately,
Mm.
and I really like that game because it makes me feel like the only thing between me and beating the game is my own skill.
Mm.
And the levels are not that long. I can, feels like the most progress I'm ever conceivably going to lose is like 40 minutes.
Mm.
I'm not losing a ton of progress, but when I die, I still feel pretty bad about it. I am like, if I'm making it to the ice world or, the whatever the world is after that, I'm going to feel pretty bad if I die because that's a lot of progress.
Mm.
But they just, I think the interesting thing about those is it's all on me. It's all how much skill I have to
Mm.
beat that game. It's more like, almost more like a sport.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm playing like a basketball, like if I'm playing one-on-one basketball with somebody and I lose, that's a skill issue. That is entirely on me.
Right.
And I can get better by improving my skills, but there's no like, I don't unlock jump shoes that let me jump higher.
Right.
The only thing I can unlock is money that like gives me time to practice more.
Mm.
Uh,
Funnily enough, when I had a list of stuff that I was gonna talk about,
mhm,
I had, because multiplayer ranked we've already covered is like a medium weight death.
mhm.
I would say tournaments in like online multiplayer games would be a
Mm.
heavyweight death.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Because like Street Fighter 6 again, a medium weight death. You lose your rank when you're playing a ranked game. But if you go to a tournament, when you lose, you're out. It's over. You got to wait till
Right.
next time to try it. I would consider that a heavyweight death.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's a good example of like the games don't necessarily need to have just one type of system. You can
Yeah.
have different systems in the game, either within like different modes or even within the same game, potentially. Tears of the Kingdom. No, I'm sorry. Breath of the Wild has a DLC mode called Master Sword Trials, I think, where it's essentially like a roguelike game built into Breath of the Wild, where you have to go through this gauntlet of challenges. You start with nothing, and you build your way up within this kind of like set rooms that you're working your way through. And when you die, and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't actually really lose anything necessarily because it's confined, it's siloed in this own section of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you get something cool if you beat the whole thing, but you don't have to. It's not required to beat the game. It's just an option that you can have if you want. So, Breath of the Wild has lightweight, medium weight, and heavyweight all within the same game. There are options for everything.
Yeah. It's nice when those are all part of the same playthrough, right? Because like Fallout, there is a hardcore setting, but you can just turn that off, or you can turn it on, whatever.
Oh, that's right.
I like how in Breath of the Wild, it's all within the same playthrough. You can experience all three types of deaths.
Right.
That's really good. That's a good way to do it. So, pros and cons about a heavyweight death. Do you have? I was struck. This is why I turned all these into open discussion rather than. I think a pro is it can force you to really think critical about your decisions a lot more than a medium weight death ever could.
Right. I'd say a pro, like with Spelunky, is it in the right context, in the right game, it can make it entirely about your skill and nothing else. Like whether you win or lose is based on how good you are at the game. Not about any other progress. It's not about grinding. It's like, are you good or bad? A interesting thing that people in the Pokemon community do. I'm sure a lot of people know about this, but I'm not sure if you do.
Probably not.
It's called a Nuzlocke. Are you aware of this?
Oh, I do know about Nuzlocks.
Okay. They've kind of bled out into other games in the past couple of years. Basically, it's like a fan-made hardcore mode for Pokemon that is entirely like self-imposed rules. Well, unless you're playing a mod, but traditionally it's, when you there's all these rules about like when you can capture Pokemon and when you can't. The very basic idea is like when your Pokemon die, you don't get to heal them. You don't get to revive them. They're dead.
Right.
And you have to release them, and it is kind of making it a sort of adding a heavyweight element into the game. And the actual heavyweight element is if you die, you start over. But it's like heavyweight elements within a heavyweight game where if you lose a character, that character is gone.
Right.
I believe the original Fire Emblem games were like this, where characters had permadeath. That was kind of the original, like, the point of the game, right? That was what they did differently.
Yeah.
If I understand correctly.
I was going to say, even though you have saves, and it is technically like a medium weight death in Fire Emblem, you just start that level over. The characters themselves all suffer heavyweight, like final deaths once they die, unless you load your save. Same with like XCOM and Wildermyth, which we talked about last week. Even though the game has saves, and technically losing is a medium weight death, your characters themselves can suffer a heavyweight death, which is interesting. Right.
Yeah, it's like a heavy. I mean, it is technically medium weight because you have the option to go back and, but it is kind of like a heavyweight element within a medium weight system. None of this stuff is ever like exclusively black or white.
Yeah, no.
These are all just like terms that we've come up with to describe these systems. So I think kind of summarizing that is one way that system is good is it lets people who want it have additional challenge.
Yeah.
Like that's not really me. That's not really something
No.
I am personally interested in because I'm already challenged enough by the base game most of the time. That being said, having those options or those modes, it's kind of like speed running for just people who love the game, who love the mechanic, and feel like they want more, can have more, and that's cool for them. I would consider that a pro.
I don't know. I guess it goes without saying these kinds of games will often only have one save. There's not like you can't have multiple saves. So I guess a con would be every decision is final. That's a pro, actually. I don't know.
Right.
I have trouble with this one.
A lot of these things feel like a con to me.
Right.
But if this is the type of thing that you want, the things that I say is horrible and it sucks, that's why you're playing it to begin with. That's what you want. I think there are just certain people who want this type of experience.
Right.
And so all of the things I would consider cons are pros to the people who want that.
Exactly.
It's not really like a game design thing as much as it is a preference thing.
Right.
Now, if you're playing a game and all of a sudden it oh, you're finally facing Ganon, and if you die, and you have to restart your whole game. That'd be pretty messed up. I think you have to be very careful about like adding heavyweight elements into other games, but it is interesting.
Suddenly, that hat looks a lot better on Schubert's head than it does yours. I bet its stats are shit anyway. In fact, maybe I can take a wide path around Lord Shubert. Maybe he won't even see me and I can continue living.
Oh man, I felt that taking the wide path.
Thus ends the Shubert scenario.
Look for our game, the Shubert scenario, on itch.io this summer.
But those are the three deaths classifications that I came up with when writing this. For the final bit of the episode, I just wanted to sort of open up the floor and talk about different dying mechanics, and we can go more contextually in these rather than mechanically.
Okay.
Before that, I do have a question. Do you care about do you care or do you not care about there being context for coming back to life in a game?
I care.
You do? Okay.
I don't, when a game doesn't have, when I die, when I go to a checkpoint and I die in Shovel Knight and I come back to that checkpoint and there's no real explanation for why that happens, I don't really care that much. Yeah. I'm not like messed up about it. But I appreciate when there is an effort made to explain why I keep dying and coming back. A good example of this is The Messenger, where the first time you die, the game actually like pauses and you get a cutscene where this little guy, Corbel, thank you. Corbel shows up and he's like, hey, I'm your little demon buddy. I pause time right before you die, and I will send you back to the last checkpoint, but I'm going to take some of your money in exchange for it. It just, I don't know. It didn't really change anything mechanically to me. I honestly don't even miss the money that he takes from me because I've already gotten the money the first time, and I'm retreading an area that I've already been to. But I like just the little bit of context that it gives me. I'm like, okay, yeah, like I'm playing a game, but I am dying in the game and am coming back. It just takes me out of it just a tiny bit less. And again, it's not a huge deal when developers don't do it, but I always appreciate when it's there.
Yeah.
And the game does some interesting things with that mechanic later on. That I've experienced that I won't spoil, and I suspect that there might be more as I get further in that game.
That game, by The Messenger, y'all, it's not what it seems.
Oh, I think I'm to a very big turning point in the game, but I still need to beat that boss.
I like Corbel contextually, but mechanically you can wait him out. I figured out you could just
Yeah.
stand there. It's not how much money he's taking, it's how much time that he's out.
Yeah, and you've died and you've gone back to a checkpoint.
Hmm.
You're traversing through an area that you've theoretically already been through.
Hmm.
You're not really losing that much money in the grand scheme of things, and you can just wait him out, like you said.
The next sort of dying mechanic I wanted to talk about, and I think you have some stuff to say about,
Mhm.
are the Souls-like death mechanics that have plagued or blessed many other games recently.
Yeah.
You die, you lose your stuff, but you can go back to where you died and get your stuff back. It's a nice medium weight death, in my opinion.
So, I think this is a really cool and interesting mechanic. I like that it exists. I think it works very well for Dark Souls. I think that there's a lot of people who played Dark Souls and were like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to put it in my game. I don't think it needs to go in every game. I think there's a lot of games where it really doesn't make sense. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I really don't think the system works that well in Hollow Knight. Because the game is about exploration. It's a Metroidvania. You have to do a lot of backtracking. You have to like go down different paths. And I think in a weird way, having the system where when you die, and then you are now not necessarily forced, but you need to go back to get your soul. Otherwise, you are playing the game with like half HP. And there are some like mechanic, you don't get to use your little like soul blast thing at all unless you have it. It just makes it to where you can't like, I feel limited in what I can explore because I always have to go back. You know, it just makes me play a lot more cautiously. And for a Metroidvania, I don't think it feels very good to have exploration be a mechanic that's limited.
That's fair. I kind of forgot that when you die in Hollow Knight, you lose some of your health and like your abilities. That's not the case in Dark Souls where it originally came from.
Oh.
You don't really lose. All you lose is your ability to level up or buy stuff. You lose your money, basically. Yeah, in a FromSoft game, for those that don't know, when you die, you lose your money, and it has a different name in every FromSoft game, but it's always the same. The money you can use to buy items, but you also use it to level up your character and your stats. So that's all you lose. You don't lose any abilities or anything. I know that you can, in Dark Souls at least, your health bar isn't it's not as full as it could be until you beat a boss or activate a specific item. But that's you don't always get that back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You have to beat a boss or you have to use an item to get that. It's not like you get back to your souls and suddenly your health bar is doubled again.
I see.
I forgot that that's even a thing in Hollow Knight, and I can kind of see how you've already got your money to worry about, but now it's even harder to get back there.
Right.
I can see where you're coming from there, honestly.
Right. I would be more than happy in some cases to just, I die, I lose my money, and I'm like, it is worth it to me to just, like, it would take me so long and take so much energy to get back to that spot that it is worth it to me to just leave my money. And, like, I'm not going to, like, that sucks, but whatever. But it's really hard to make the decision to just leave half of your health and like permanently gimp your character until you can make it back to that spot, or you talk to the NPC that can like summon your soul for you, which I don't think summons your money as well. I don't think. Don't quote me on that.
That's just not a problem in Dark Souls actually. So I see where you're coming from.
I also think that it creates a little bit of a weird gameplay loop, or a weird difficulty loop where when the people who are good at the game get better at the game because they have more money to buy more equipment. Whereas if you're bad at the game, you kind of get stuck in this loop where you just keep losing over and over again. And the game, like the worse you are at the game, the more difficult the game is.
Right.
Whereas the better you are at the game, the easier it is, which is...
That's some backwards logic, honestly.
Yeah. It feels a little bit off. So I think it's a cool system, and I like it in a lot of cases. I do think it adds that little extra weight to a medium weight game where now I've died, and it adds weight to the fact that I've died because now I need to go back and get my stuff. In addition to like having to repeat my time, but there are some trade-offs to it as well. There are some trade-offs as well, and it rewards good gameplay, but you just have to be cautious of like, okay, well, you're rewarding good gameplay, but what does that reward translate to? If it translates to cosmetics or like unlocking new areas, that's one thing. But if it's translating to items that make you better at the game, at that point, you are making the game easier for the people who are already good at the game rather than the other way around. And, I think the get good mentality is kind of what you need to beat Dark Souls. But that's not always like, it's just, get good so you can get better so you don't have to be good. You like get good to a certain point and then the game becomes easier. But if you're stuck in that loop, you've already lost all your money. What are you going to do? Like reload a save and then fight the previous, it's pretty tricky.
Yeah, it is, honestly. I think I don't have that get good mentality. I'm just a freaking masochist and would be happy grinding my head against a wall until the wall falls down.
Oh, see, I get to a certain point in games like that and I'm like, oh man, I really need to get better at this game. And I go, or I could, like go program something and get good at that and then have something at the end.
Right.
And have like something tangible at the end. I'm like, or I could go like do my dishes.
Right.
That also is hard and never ends. But at the end, my house doesn't stink.
Dude, that is the mentality I need. Mine's oh shit, it's 3 a.m. This is my 500th try. I guess I'll try again in 3 hours when I'm awake again.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I get in those loops sometimes too, especially with platformers. I think that's also part of it for me is if the game kind of has its hooks in me anyway. Like Shovel Knight has the exact same system as, well, it's the Dark Souls system, but it's just money that you lose. But I've beaten Shovel Knight several times and just like beat my head against the wall over and over again to beat a boss.
Yeah.
Because the game feels good to me.
Well, before we end it, do you have any more just open floor stuff you want to talk about dying in games?
Something that got lost in the cut that I did want to bring up again, and I think we'll just get like spoiler territory here. This is open floor. I think we've done pretty well up until this point to not actually spoil anything. Past this point, the spoilers ahead. Life is Strange, I think, is a great example of a game that blends together different types of death weight. So the way that the game functions is you have different kind of set pieces in which you can make decisions. So you might have like the diner setting where you first go to the diner and there are people you can talk to there and there are decisions you can make, but you can rewind as much as you want within those decisions. So you can kind of explore every single branching path within that set piece, but there comes a point where you need to move on. And in order to move on, it usually gives you like some very clear indication that like once you do this action, this will move to the next set piece. You need to go back and like decide what decisions do I want to make? What things am I going to leave behind? It satisfies my brain of like, I want to try everything. I want to see what all of the options will do. But it's still kind of the medium weight mindset of you have to make a decision and there are consequences to this decision that you make. Again, this is kind of, it's not explicitly death, but progress and like sacrificing time, which are all kind of the same thing. So I think it does it really well. Lightweight, you can try everything. medium weight, you do have to make a decision.
Mm.
And heavyweight character stuff, like characters can die
Mhm.
based on your decision.
Mhm.
And there is a particular point in the game where all of the decisions that you made up until that point result in the death of a character or not. Depending on what, the decisions over like multiple set pieces determine the outcome of this death.
Right. This is perfect because this leads into my final question and the big question about why I started writing all of this. With video game characters expected to die so many times, how come we still cry when it's written into the script? Heavy spoilers,
Yeah.
heavy spoilers ahead, with Chloe dying at the
Mhm.
very beginning of the game, and a few times based on some of your wrong decisions. How come I still cried like a baby when she died at the end?
Right. Like
And not all the other times.
she can die several times throughout the game.
Yeah.
But it only, I guess I think maybe the reason that you still feel it is kind of the through line between all the death systems, which is like permanence.
Mhm.
A lightweight system, there is no permanence. You like any decision you make can be undone.
Mhm.
A medium weight system, some decisions have a permanent consequence, but not always. And then a heavyweight system, everything you do matters because there's no way to undo what you've done.
Mm.
And I think with an actual character death, even if it's scripted and it always happens, there is a permanence to it. Like they don't come back.
That's the end of the
it's
game,
not a
right?
Square Enix game. they theoretically don't come back,
Mhm.
and that is like that character's gone, and you can't.
Mhm.
There's nothing you can do, and I think even if it's a lightweight game and a character dies for real,
Mhm.
now that is almost like a heavyweight element being thrown into it because that is a level of permanence that you can't undo.
That's fair. Yeah.
And I think if it was like, let's say Life is Strange and you can like go back, there's like Chloe's death, but then you can just like go back to a previous save point and not have her die.
Mhm.
Then I wouldn't care as much. I'd be like, oh, I don't think I would feel as hard. Same thing with what's her name?
No, the one that committed suicide.
Yeah, the one that kills herself.
I do not
No,
her name.
I didn't remember her sister's name, and so she killed herself, and now I don't even remember her name.
Oh no!
Oh
Cut
no.
all of this. We're bad people.
Oh no.
No, it's been so long since I played that.
It hasn't been that long for me.
Oh. I think it starts with an M.
Molly. Kate Marsh.
8. No, Max. M.
Okay, so I felt really like with all the set pieces and stuff, you can always rewind.
Mm-hmm.
The Kate Marsh part is kind of like a set piece within a set piece where
Mm-hmm.
once that section starts where she is standing on the roof
Mm-hmm.
and you essentially have to talk her down and you have to convince her that you care about her by demonstrating that you as a player have learned and remembered things about her that have appeared throughout the story. It's basically like a personality quiz for Kate Marsh. Do you remember?
I believe you have to like go into her diary too when she's not looking in order
Yes.
to get past this part.
You have to be a pretty horrible friend to actually be a good friend to her.
Yeah.
Regardless, you can't rewind after you've answered a question.
Right. They take away that lightweight death system and solidly tell you this is going to be a heavyweight death.
Yeah. I think there was something where you like rewound a bunch before then,
Mm-hmm.
and then Max is basically tapped out and she
Mhm.
can't rewind anymore. And then that is when this system that's when this happens. And so it feels important. There is no undoing whatever questions you answer. That is permanent. If she dies, she dies. You can't rewind.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, because it is a permanent thing that happens, it does feel very weighty. It does feel like a decision I've made, and there isn't anything you can do to bring her back,
Mm-hmm.
which is depressing.
Yeah.
It's depressing and it feels bad. And so I think when it hits is when it's permanent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for a death to matter, it needs to be heavy.
I think we answered the question, folks. I think if it's a heavyweight death and it's an actual character, not some like survival character, then
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even then, I'm sad when Steve dies after 2 years of playing Minecraft.
There is a game. It is Ultimate Alliance 2.
Oh yeah.
There's a point in the game, and I was literally like a child when I played this. So I don't remember. Basically, there's like two characters. There's a point where there are two characters, and it's like you have to pick which one lives and which one dies. And I don't think that there is a way to get around that system. And it's like Beast and Storm or something like that. It's two of the X-Men. And it's like pick which one lives, which one dies, and there's no getting around it. And I remember being a kid, I'm like, oh my God, what? I gotta decide. And I just like walked around the area for a long time thinking about it. Me not knowing anything about comic book characters, not knowing who these people are, literally just picked which one I thought looked cooler, Beast.
Oh man.
And I just, that sat with me for a really long time. I'm like, man, I had to make that decision, and it was permanent. I don't think you ever get to unlock that other character in the game. A game that infamously you can unlock all of these characters. I think that decision is permanent.
Wow. I didn't know that about. I don't remember playing Ultimate Alliance 2. I know I played one of them, but I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
Was that little Sam's first introduction to death, I guess?
Probably.
That's crazy.
Probably. The devil kills whoever you don't save. He throws him into lava.
That's crazy. Man. I had a whole thing written about Red Dead Redemption, but like I think Life is Strange fit all the points much better.
I was going to bring up Red Dead Redemption as well, because it is a really good point where you die all the time, but then at the end you actually die, and I think what does it for me. I've seen the ending, but I haven't actually beat it myself. What did it for me is that, yeah, you died before, but when at the end of the game, like John Marston is dead, and you're not John. Like you can continue playing. You can continue enjoying the game, but not as John Marston anymore. It's fundamentally kind of the same thing, but it's, there is a permanence to it, and the game is permanently changed after that. Sure, you could go and load a save, but then you haven't beaten the game anymore.
Right.
It's essentially like to progress past this point, you have to make a permanent sacrifice.
Right. And I think on top of that permanence, again, heavy spoilers for this both Red Dead 1 and 2, both of them kind of telegraph, like you're expecting the worst in the final parts of the game. Red Dead 1, you're working for the government to capture all your old gang members. You do that, and it's like, you're free to go. Your family's safe at your house. Go ride to them now, cowboy. So you start riding there, some Jose Gonzalez plays. And you get there and you hug them and you're like, oh man, where are the credits? Why am I still playing the game? And you just continue living for a little bit your old life, and then it all goes to shit. And then in Red Dead 2, about halfway through the game, Arthur Morgan gets tuberculosis.
Oh.
And he gets diagnosed at a doctor, and like for the last half of the game, you're just a little more sluggish and you're constantly coughing all the time.
Oh, man.
And you're just waiting for it to happen. And then the moment that it happens, not only is he suffering from tuberculosis, all kinds of shit's going down with all these people you've spent the whole game being friends with. It's so beautiful. Both of those games, I shed a good tear.
Man. And I mean, that's a good example of like, it's tricky to say that a character is dead, but not say the game is over.
Yeah.
I think there's a number of games where like a character, like how do you do that unless you have a secondary character come in to replace them, or you just end the game.
Right.
I'm trying to think. I know there's probably a good example somewhere out there where the main character dies and then it's just the end of the game.
Right.
And it's like, well, the game was going to end anyway. It's sad, but it doesn't really change anything for me because the game was already over. I'm already ending my relationship with this character, and then in the story, the character dies, but that doesn't change anything for me. It's different when, like I'm still playing the game, but now that character is gone. It's weird.
Right. I can't think of a specific game, but yeah, there's definitely games where your main character dies, it's scripted, it's really sad. And it's like, would you like to load a previous save to continue playing? And it's like, oh no, I don't feel that anymore.
Yeah. Contrary to that, this is a little bit tangential, but like the ending of Breath of the Wild, spoilers, it's kind of the opposite where you don't die, but you win, and you bring Zelda back, and you look over the fields, and it's like, this is a new beginning for Hyrule. Would you like to load a previous save? And then you just go back. I still haven't beaten Tears of the Kingdom because I'm afraid it's going to be the same ending. I have a feeling that it's not, but I don't know.
Right.
I don't. It's just one of those things that, like, in Breath of the Wild, if you beat the game and then everything stayed the same, it wouldn't really feel like you actually beat the game,
Yeah.
So
I get what you're saying. It would be hard to do, but it'd be neat if you could just walk through and see everyone fucking happy.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be fun, but it'd be cool.
There's like the big thing I'm thinking of is I don't remember what it's called in Breath of the Wild, but there's all the like goopy crap with the eyeballs coming out of it. I think it's pretty much implied that like, oh, that's Malice. It's like Malice from Ganon. And those are elements in the environment that are kind of like platforming sections, or like they block certain sections. If you beat Ganon, I think it's implied that those all go away because those are like some manifestation of him. If you died and then those didn't, or if the game continued and then those didn't go away, it would be weird. It wouldn't make sense within the context. So I think that's probably why they did it.
Right.
But I wish they did.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not really a death thing, but it just felt kind of similar.
Outside of context, I had a few things written down for mechanic-wise, how it can soften the blow of a video game character death. Like a Souls-like, especially in Dark Souls, it's the classic you died, right?
Right.
It like you watch as your character faints to the ground and then slowly fades out of existence, and the enemy that killed you is like finishing their animation, and it's like a lot of pomp and circumstance around your death. If that happened every time John Marston bit the dust, I think I'd still feel sad when he died at the end, but I don't think I would feel as much. I think they do some deliberate things in the Red Dead series. They're kind of similar in both, where your character dies, it goes black and white, they ragdoll, it's kind of funny for like a second, and then it zooms up and it's black screen. You don't get to see anything else, and you can start the game over.
It's I see. It doesn't give you enough time to think about it.
Yeah.
It makes it's like there's levity to it.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that never happened. It's like black and white. It's like, oh, this never really happened.
Right.
It goes, it doesn't linger on your death like a Souls-like game does. And there's not really, I don't think there's any time in a Souls-like where your character dies and it's like supposed to be sad.
I think that would be a little weird.
That would be a little weird, yeah. So I think there's things that developers can do outside of the script mechanically to make deaths a little softer if they're saving that for an actual death,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. To take just a half step back, or I thought of another good example of a contextual death.
Okay.
Prince of Persia, Sands of Time.
Oh, yeah.
So the whole narrative is framed through this is the prince later in his life telling the story of like this adventure to his son.
Yeah.
And when you die in the game,
Uh-huh.
it like you die and then basically like it cuts and the prince is like, no, that's not how it happened. It's like the context is he like made a mistake telling the story.
Yeah.
It's a little silly, and if you think about it too hard,
Yeah.
him like being like, and then I died. Wait, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
But that I just appreciate that they put that little bit of effort into making it contextual and keeping that overall narrative of this is a story being told.
Right. And they can like sort of brush it under the rug. Like, no, that's not actually what happened.
Right.
Another good example of that is the Homestar Runner game, Dangeresque. The what is it? The triangulate something. There's a little point and click game where you play as Strong Bad, and when you die, he's like, that never happened. But that's another fun thing. Is there anything else you want to say? Because I think I wrapped up everything I wanted to say.
No, I think that's all I had. It was a good topic. It was really interesting. I had never really thought about how all of the different weights of death, how those systems can interact with each other, and like how it's not always black or white. That was really interesting. It's not something I had really thought about before, and makes me appreciate Tears of the Kingdom even more. Best game ever. Actually, that one was Breath of the Wild, but whatever.
It's just same.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was playing Resident Evil. I'm like, oh man, what if I didn't die? What if I was actually the hero of the story, like in a movie or something?
Yeah.
That's literally how this whole episode started.
It's something that I have thought about while playing games quite a bit, but haven't ever really like sat down and thought about fully.
I guess. Well, I think we'll wrap this up with a question I asked earlier. With video game characters expected to die so many times, how come it's still sad when it's written into a script?
Yeah. To answer that, if you're on Discord, use the spoiler feature if possible. If you're on the YouTube comment section, try not to spoil that. Try not to spoil anything for other people as best you can.
Or, if you're... we should put a warning at the top of this. Hey, don't read the comments.
Yeah. Well, we can do a pinned comment on YouTube or something.
Okay. Yeah, don't scroll down. Yeah, all right.
If you want... Here, let's say this. If you want to, like, say a comment that has a spoiler for a death, put the name of the game at the top. Just at the top of the comment, and people can just tread lightly through the comment section. You know what the question of the week is.
Or better yet, go to our Discord and post it with the spoiler.
Yeah.
I think that'd be the best way to do it, honestly.
Yeah. Cool.
This has been Systems in Play.
All right, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye. I learned what sound a kangaroo makes, and I wish I didn't.
I'm going to stop in midair and snort all this crack cocaine, and maybe I won't die.